most people get their spark back and their time back. And then usually the money goes hand in hand.
Today, I'm joined by Erin Armstrong, CEO and founder of erinarmstrong.com. Erin, welcome to the Edge for Tomorrow. Thanks so much for
Thank
being
you for
here with me
having
today.
me.
I love how you talk about how there's so many different ways to
Mhm.
move forward as a business and so many different outcomes.
A lot of times when you start your business, you get it to a point where it's working. You're like, yeah, I did it, what? And it's different markers for different people. But I think over time, unless you were really intentional in the beginning, which is super rare because you're just trying to survive, a lot of times on the back end, there are a lot of operational and process things that don't really support like high profit. Maybe you're making a profit, but generally, I wouldn't even say generally. Most businesses have the opportunity to double their profit. And it's not things like firing people. That's really more of a large corporation thing. Often it's more the flow of processes or continuing to offering services or products that are really costing you quite a lot of money. But I think the issue is most people don't have the awareness, because if they did, they would pull it out.
Well, it's an incredible insight.
I think that's the common experience is business owners often come to me feeling like okay, it's a successful business, but like what more is there? In a way, after a few years of quote success, many become a little bit resentful. Like, I mean, yeah, I'm making 200K, I mean, a year. I get to take that home as profit, but it requires this, and this of me, right? And is this really it? Is it worth it? In the beginning, it feels like it. And so we'll look at that. To date, I've not had a business that I've worked with in that capacity that we haven't been able to double the profit. It's kind of unbelievable, but in January of this year, I worked with a business owner and we were able to increase her profit, not her revenue, but her profit by over 3,000% in less than a year. And so I think it shows you people don't like to talk about this because you do have to get really granular and you have to really understand a business model and what an owner wants to do or not do in their business. But the potential is there for almost everyone. Now, 3,000 is an outlier, but I would say the common is 200 to 400%, unless you've already really looked at it with fresh eyes.
Why the focus on profit over
Great
revenue?
question. Well, I think so when I first started working professionally with businesses, the sexy metrics that everyone likes to talk about, like 1 million in sales, right? Or 10 million in sales, and it does feel good. It's worth celebrating. It's exciting. And yet you can take those same businesses sometimes and look, at a business that's generating 10 times less and their profit might be the same or higher. And so I guess for me, I've always been interested in the profit. What does that business owner get to take home? Or what do they get to, if they chose to reinvest? I want people to still be able to offer these amazing things, but to make sure they're getting something in return. Um, and then they can choose how they want to spend their time and their resources.
When it comes to growing revenue, it's like there's always something that must increase, right? Some sort of effort. Like there's like if you double the revenue, so say you have a $2 million business versus a $1 million business. And from what I hear you saying, it's like, well, those two businesses could both have a $200,000
Right.
profit margin. And but but then I think so. I'm thinking backwards. I'm like, oh my gosh, that other business has to do double the work.
Yes.
In some sense, there's got to be more employee, whether
Right.
it's employee power or other types of
Right.
cogs. I
Right.
mean, that
If
can really
nothing
take a
else,
toll.
if exactly all those things. And then if it's not those, it's going to be typically the owner's like energy, like they're the ones that have to manage it. Even if it's set up where there's not like a lot of employees, they have it going in their minds like, oh yeah, that goes on here and this, and it's just a lot of moving pieces. So like kind of the bigger you grow it, the more moving parts there are, which some people want that. But I think for the average small business owner in the US, I think a lot of times people are motivated not by money. It's like they believe in what they're doing and they want money to be a great byproduct of that. but they actually like what they're doing. And so we want to keep it
Right.
where you like what you're doing, you like your life, you like your work, you like your company, but that you're also getting a lot of return.
How has it been successful to find new clients? What has business development been like?
I'm always trying new things, but for a long, long time, I've had a pretty regular, I was going to say big, but that's not accurate, a regular social media presence. And I think we're in an era of like people look and don't necessarily engage, but at the same time, I think consistency when they're ready. I do see some of these people that have been hanging around for years. When they're ready, they come forward, right? I also think that there's a lot of opportunity, frankly, with AI as far as reaching out. I've always offered free consultations because I think that's the only way that people really get a sense of like what is possible with their business. Who would I be working with? A lot of firms don't do that anymore. And I think it's a real shame because you take the people and the relationships out of the potential, conversation and that changes things.
What are the different strategies that companies need based on, small business or mid-sized business versus Fortune
Yeah.
500?
I think I would say there's Fortune 500 companies and then everyone else. And, I use the word mid-sized a lot because if you're that business that's achieved 10 million revenue, many of those business owners are very proud of that, as they should be. So they don't want to be lumped with small business owners. But the reality is, as long as you're privately owned and you're generating, I would say, under 15 million, most are operating as a small business. Even when you're looking to grow your business, when you're not a large company, cash flow really matters, because you can't just sustain yourself for 10, 15 years by having investors just continue to throw in money, right? The stakes are high because it's got to work this year and next year and the next year. And maybe one of those years you can not have a profit, but the runway is going to be very short compared to like a huge C corporation, Fortune 500 company. I also think, as I believe I mentioned earlier in this interview, that I think there's something very personal for most people that go into business, that whether it's who they're serving or the problem they're solving, there is something that is calling them to do that. And that's just a different entry point too, because it's not just about what can make you the most money. I mean, we want to make you the most money, but we want to make sure that you're making the most money and you get to do what you want to do. I think that's that's an unusual nuance that sometimes it comes up a lot, where I'll start working with businesses that have achieved what they thought was success, right? Like if I just make 500,000 in revenue, or if I just make 2 million, and then they do, and because they've grown their company to a certain amount, and it's pretty common that they'll be like, I don't really like my company anymore. And so we'll dig into it, and it's for different reasons, but a lot of times it's because they're doing something adjacent to what they want to be doing. Like it's not that they have to dissolve their company and start from scratch, but somewhere along the way they figured out that something was going to work, and it might not be something that they really wanted to do. And so it's kind of the golden cuffs, right? Because at that point they know it works, but it's requiring something of them, or they're delivering something in a way that isn't really what's like sustainable for them. And so, when you're in that position, I think yes, there's always an opportunity to course correct. And if you're in that position, know that you can course correct.
How do people feel when they're able to find a solution and to get back to enjoying their business?
Most people get their spark back and their time back, and then usually the money goes hand in hand. Usually the happier people are, the more money is made, ironically, even when that is something I can't like show on a forecast model. It's just a really feel good moment, but there's all kinds of those. I think everyone has different desires, but you know if you are not loving your business, know that that's a sign that something needs to be kind of reevaluated. Even if you're making good money, you should probably stop and reevaluate it, and because there's so many possibilities.
And I want to ask you about your business health assessment framework. I know that you've worked really hard in identifying 6 integral parts of business
Mhm.
financial health. Is there any insights you wanted to share or
I put together something to call the Business Financial Health Quiz, which is like an assessment. This framework comes from working with business owners, hundreds of business owners individually over the decades, because even though the specifics are different, the flavor of what's not working in their business is so similar. And so it takes into account things like your cash flow, owner compensation, employee return on investment. Like, are your what you're paying your employees, like, are you actually getting real return from what you are outputting? That's a big source of contention for a lot of small business owners. And but I think for me, the healthy businesses, the ones that are sustainable, they have 6 really important elements that, it's not that, unfortunately, if you have one, that is great, but it doesn't mean you have a healthy business, because let's say you pay yourself really well as the owners, um, but then your pricing and positioning is really off. Well, arguably it's not necessarily that one thing's going to tank you either, but I think I like to think of it as like a continuum, a circle. And the stronger that each of them is, the more they support each other. It's a free resource, so if anyone wants to know how their business scores, you can basically go to my website, erinarmstrong.com/quiz, and you can take it. It's going to take a few minutes of your time.
and it's rewarding always to have like a tangible outcome, like a
Yeah.
test score or any advice that you have for business owners or executives who are maybe a little fearful of even, taking an assessment like that or like peeking under the hood to see if it's okay. Any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're not alone if that is how you're feeling. I think most people feel that way. And yet, the only way that we can make change is to get clarity. And so the more clarity you have, the more options you have, because you can make a path for moving forward, and you can make a path to get to a better place. Just remind yourself of that. Like everything in life, the more we know, the more options and ways forward we have.